It's here. We are redefining what it means to sit at the girls' table. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Girls Table, a podcast where women founders, creators, and investors share their stories. Today, I'm joined by Rebekah Bastian, who is an entrepreneur, award-winning author, artist, tech executive, mentor, wife, mother, and an aerial acrobat. Rebekah spent 15 years at Zillow with roles including VP of Product, VP of Community and Culture, until one day waking up in the middle of the night to the idea of writing her first book, Blaze Your Own Trail, which received the Gold Independent Publishers Award. Based on the book, Rebekah started the company Own Trail to really just help people embrace their non-linear career journeys to see what other paths really look like and help each other make progress towards their own aspirations. So Rebekah, thank you so much for hopping on the Girls Table today. How are you doing?
Great, thanks for having me.
Well, I am so excited, but before we get started, I would love to start off with 10 questions, one-word answers. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Who is the biggest inspiration in your life?
My father.
One adjective you would use to describe yourself.
Optimistic.
What is the best book you've ever read?
This is hard because I love a lot of books, but my co-founder gave me one for a birthday present that I loved called Proposals for the Feminine Economy.
Ooh, you should have said your own book. No, I'm joking.
Second favorite book.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Where do you want to go more than any other place in the world?
I think Portugal's at the top of my list right now.
And we're going to have to meet up there because I think there are a lot of conferences there and it looks like an amazing place.
We're in a WhatsApp group together and I feel like there's always people that are like, hey, anyone in Portugal right now? So
yeah,
I'm down for it.
On my list too. What is your go-to pastime?
Creative outlet. So some form of art or creation is always what I'm filling my time with.
What time do you usually wake up in the morning?
7:30 on a weekday. Hopefully closer.
A little bit earlier than me.
Yeah. It's the kid. Yeah.
What is your hidden talent?
Most of my talents aren't too hidden because I like to put them out there, but I did come in second place in a pun competition one time. So I have that.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot and make you say a pun for the listeners today.
Okay. What should I say it about?
Should I give you podcast?
Turn this on the spot. I'm going to have to come back with that one. You're going to get a middle of the night tweet from me with a pun about podcasts.
Okay, I can't wait. I'm going to be looking out for it. All the listeners will too.
Okay. Amazing.
What is one thing you do almost every day that's helped you be the best version of yourself?
I'm going to double down on the answer and say creative outlets again. That's my personal therapy, is making different kinds of art, which includes writing, includes aerial, includes visual arts, but I got to have some of that in my day to stay happy and sane.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about randomly starting to draw. Like somebody recommended it recently because like staring at a screen all day just isn't sustainable. And it's like you need some way to just like shut off for a second, be with your thoughts. And that is either writing, drawing, just being outside. So I definitely feel that.
It's so true. Yeah, I guess outside, I have a dog that I have to walk a few times a day too. And that's like a really good forcing function to just, even if it just is around the block, but like, yeah, get out a little bit.
And if you could do any career, what would it be?
I mean, honestly, I think I'm doing it. I'm, creating something that is completely in line with my passions and values is how I want to be spending my day.
I love that. I think I've heard a couple people either come on or just in their careers where they wish they were doing something different. And I challenge people just to go out and whether it's doing it on the side or starting a side hustle, but start doing something that really brings you happiness and don't just stay in something because it's the safest thing to do, but do something that you really want to do.
Yes, totally. I mean, yeah, I left a really comfortable corporate executive job to do this, and I'm thrilled to have it's a privilege to be able to do that, and I love it.
Now I really want to get into who you are as a person and how you became the person you are today. So when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So I've always had a very inventive side of me. I kind of both in my head wanted to be an inventor or just wanted to make things in general. So that, and also I did ballet for a long time and wanted to be a ballerina, which I kind of joke that now with, having been in product development and now having my own company plus doing aerial acrobatics for the past 14 years, I've kind of found that adult intersection of ballerina and inventor the way that it fits into my life. But I think that the roots have always been there.
Yeah, and you actually originally went to college for music, but ended up kind of failing out. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I had been doing music. It was actually, I played oboe. It was the only thing that I didn't really screw up during my teenage years. I was a little train wreck. And so I got into college for music with that, but then I was just too distracted with still being a train wreck. So I failed out the first time. I moved to Seattle with an ex-boyfriend because he'd been living here. And that was back in 97. And I've mostly been here ever since. Except for a little stint in grad school. But yeah, when I finally ended up going back to community college and then transferring to University of Washington here and ended up doing mechanical engineering for both undergrad and graduate degrees after that. So big change in course. I think like where you are in your life at different times can really make an impact on what you're focused on.
Yeah, and do you think everybody should go to college, or do you see a future with a different type of education system?
It's so interesting because, obviously, the current education system in the U.S. is really unhelpful for a lot of people when you look at, the student loan crisis and the paths to viable careers and all of that. It's interesting because, a lot of the best people I've ever hired have had non-traditional educational backgrounds, like boot camps or just, self-taught or things like that. But I think there are still so many biases that exist within a lot of fields around thinking that people need more of the traditional educational backgrounds. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, something's kind of got to change there. I would love to see change in the direction of more accessible opportunities for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so and that's definitely why myself and why I believe in Web3 and also the digital aspect, where I believe that you're going to have education virtually and it's just going to be more accessible to all. And you mentioned a little bit, but you ended up going to community college, graduating, working at Microsoft, but then you switched to Zillow and went there for 15 years. So why did you stay at Zillow for so long?
Because it was just always changing. So it was it's funny because when I went to Microsoft at first out of college, which was a total shift from what I had gone to school for anyway. It was kind of an accidental job of a program manager there. And it was okay. I was just kind of okay, this is what a real job is like. It's, you're not super excited, but you're getting paid and, Mm-hmm. And then I actually ended up leaving just because I hated the commute there. And I was the first person at Zillow to answer an ad in Craigslist. And so I started when it was a tiny company, still in stealth. And it was so exciting that suddenly I'm like, oh, you can be excited by work you're doing. That's cool. And I kept being pretty excited for the whole 15 years. I mean, obviously it ebbs and flows, but every time I, started to feel like I was stagnating in one area, I'd get new opportunities and keep growing. And I moved into working in most areas of the product. I moved into people management, grew into an executive role. And then I even pivoted from product into an org I created called Community and Culture there. So I think as long as you're growing and learning, it's hard to get bored.
Yeah, and I think so many kids nowadays think oh, you have to find this dream job or you have to keep switching careers. So we don't see it as much nowadays. And also at your time at Zillow, you actually had 2 kids. So as a mom, did having kids ever hold you back career-wise?
No, and it's worth noting that because I totally thought it would. I had this idea in my head, which most of us have, I think, because it's kind of what the world tells us. I had this idea that I need to get to wherever I'm going in my career before I have kids, because once I have kids, I'm going to plateau from there or, go back down or whatever. And it was really not true. And I was lucky to be at a company that, was very supportive. But I got promoted into my first people management job when I was 8 months pregnant with my first kid. Which was a little overwhelming, but awesome because I'd been wanting that. And I was kind of bummed. I'm well, I wanted to move into people management, but I guess it's too late now. But no, I was promoted right then. And then I was actually promoted to VP shortly after my second maternity leave. So, and not only did it not hold me back from career growth, but I actually think I became a better leader after having kids. You get some pretty cool perspectives from that and skills and, ways of being productive and, tackling hard things that I think made me better at my job.
Yeah, and I think so many potential moms or people who are thinking about it are scared of that, because I think it is this look where it's like, oh, if you leave, maybe you won't get promoted, maybe you won't get the job, you're going to be held back. And that's amazing to hear that that didn't hold you back, but actually pushed you forward.
Yeah, exactly. And I love to tell people that because I want to bust that myth, which isn't to say it's easy. I mean, like, you're doing paid labor and unpaid labor, and it's a lot, but also, like, you decide what you have capacity for. No one else gets to tell you that, you know?
Yeah, and then you actually started having this interest in writing. So how did you find out about your interest in writing, and how old were you?
I actually didn't realize I liked writing until I was 36. So I'm 44 now, so not that long ago. I was asked to write a guest blog post by just like a local women in tech blog. And I did, and it was really fun. I've never, like, you know, I've been writing like functional specifications for product work for years, but I'd never written anything for fun. And so I shared it out and people really liked it. So one thing about me is that I'm pretty delusional in terms of like what's possible. So I took my first ever blog post and I cold emailed Ariana Huffington with it. And she, like a week later, responded to me and she's like, "This is great. Here, I'll give you a byline on Huffington Post." So I went from never having written before to suddenly like prolifically writing. I suddenly realized I liked writing. I had a place where I could publish it, and I realized I had a lot to say. So I started writing all the time, and it was a blast.
And then you also started writing for Forbes.com as well, right? So
yeah, that's the main place I'm publishing these days. And yeah, and then I wrote a book in between there. So writing's become a very big part of my life, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
Which I also, you know, another thing I like to talk about too, to share with people is like that, plus like I started doing aerial when I was 30. I've started doing digital art these past couple years. Like we know each other through some of the Web3 and NFT world. I started doing that more recently. I started doing apocalyptic themed embroidery during lockdown with the pandemic. So like, but I like to name that because sometimes you think like, oh, I already know what my skills or passions are in life, and it turns out like there's always new things to discover about yourself, and it's never too late to start doing those new things. So I think it's been an important lesson for me to embrace that. And
it's so funny. I tweeted the other day, I was like, adult hobbies, like they're so underrated. Like I'm taking tennis lessons, and actually over COVID, I started doing aerial yoga. I was living in Australia, which is too funny. I'm not that good though. I'm not flexible or yogi, but I loved it because it was just something different. And I don't think people talk about it enough. Like I don't think there's enough adult sports where we all get together and like try new things. I think it's just kind of like when you're a kid, you try all these things, and as you get older, you don't make enough time for these hobbies. So I love that you did that and were able to really grow as a person too, and eventually make your hobbies into a career.
Yes, exactly. And even the things that like seem like they're kind of on the side, or you know, they kind of are, but like it all ties in together. Like I made this Venn diagram of my life a little while ago because I was like, I have a feeling it's not so discombobulated as it seems. And it turns out like I had these like 3 intersecting circles that were like community, creativity, and entrepreneurship. And the cool thing is that OwnTrail, my company, was at the very center of all 3. But everything I'm doing in my life fits into those. And so I really think that all these different activities like enhance each other and make me better at like the whole picture, you know, and give new perspectives. So it doesn't have to be just like a side hobby. It's like, it's part of who you are, right?
Yeah, and I think going hand in hand with that, how did you first think of the idea of writing a book?
Well, like you said in the intro, I woke up in the middle of the night with it. But I mean, I've been thinking, so once I realized I loved writing, I had kind of been thinking like, oh, it'd be really cool to write a book. But I didn't feel like I was like an expert on one topic, nor did I want to just, you know, I feel like there's a lot of books out there that like, you're like, that could have been an article, you know, really pick up, and I didn't want to be one of those. So I just had it in my head. But then, yeah, like most of my big ideas, I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, I need to write a choose your own adventure book, but about real experiences. Just kind of. So I went into work the next day and I told a couple of the women on my team about my idea, and they're like, oh, that's really cool. I was like, okay, that's all the validation I needed. I'm gonna do it.
All right, so I need to fall asleep and wake up in the middle of the night with more ideas, because for some reason that just doesn't happen to me. I'm like sitting there wide awake being like, wow, I have my to-do list, I have this, I have that. So don't really come up with too much entrepreneurial ideas.
It's not all just But, pay attention to when you do get your big ideas, because I feel like there's some pattern there,
Yeah.
It's not always a million, but.
And what is the summary of Blaze Your Own Trail?
Yeah, so it's like, for people that are familiar with the Choose Your Own Adventure books, it's like the whole table of contents is basically a big decision tree. So at the end of each chapter, you decide where to go next, and so you're making a decision. And so in this book, there's like all these different pathways. There's 19 different endings, and it's exploring the different decisions and pathways that women take through our personal and professional lives. So it's like this kind of fictional plot line, like you are the person going through the book and this is what you're experiencing. But then I weave a lot of data in as well. I'm really trying to embrace the idea that there is no one right path, and things aren't going to necessarily go the way you planned, but you're going to be okay and make it through and create kind of solidarity around a lot of these shared experiences that we have.
Wow, that's amazing. I can't wait to read it. It's definitely on my list. I really went to the website yesterday to go order it, so going to order it. And how did the book end up leading to you starting your company, Own Trail?
Yeah, so it was not intentional, but I signed with my publisher, Barrett Kohler. They're great. And I was kind of playing around with like a marketing plan for the book, and I was like, oh, it'd be cool to like make a website where people can share what their trails have been as a way of like, a book launch website. But then as I started thinking about that, and of course I'm a product person, I just started realizing when like, there's actually something really there bigger than the book, of like the power of seeing what people's paths really look like, because what we see right now is we see the highlight reels. We see like what's on LinkedIn or social media or someone's resume, and it looks like all the wins and all of the like picture perfect end results, and you don't see the real thing. And so both owning that for yourself, like owning your story authentically, but then also just seeing all the other paths that people have taken, I'm like, oh, there's something important there. And so it started growing into a company. And I met my co-founder Katie around that time and told her about what I was working on, and she loved it and got it. And basically we both ended up quitting executive jobs that we loved to build this out. So it was kind of the accidental entrepreneurship thing.
And that's so funny, because that's pretty much my goal of this podcast, was to be like, hey, everybody has a story. Everybody has challenges. Like, it's not just one way, but it looks that way through social media and all these outlets. Like, people only talk about their successes. And it's like, no, there's also failures in between. There's definitely times where everybody has struggled, but I don't think we hear that enough. And that's why I personally love looking at your trail, because it's interesting to see who you are as a person. First off, you get to know somebody, but then you see like, hey, it's not just one path. Like, it's not just up all the way. And it looks that way sometimes. And it looks that way to any successful person and somebody looking up at them. So I love that goal, because I think it really is important to both share this, but then see it for yourself.
Yeah, totally. And so like the foundation of Own Trail is that like sharing these authentic journeys, and we have thousands of them on the site. And then what we've evolved into over time has been both, you share your story, you see other people's stories, it's very inspiring and empowering, but then how are you taking action on that? So we've really moved into this platform for working towards your next milestone. And a big part of that is not just thinking about like, oh, what's the next milestone in terms of what I thought I was supposed to do next? Like, a lot of people are kind of following these checklists through life that they think they're supposed to be doing, but I think a lot of people on Own Trail are suddenly looking around, and this is definitely a phenomenon we've seen during the pandemic and everything, is like people are looking around and saying, this isn't actually serving me, like this isn't fulfilling, this isn't what I want to be doing. And so working towards the next thing that is really in line with their passions and where they're needed. And that's really cool to see people making like life-changing progress in that way.
Yeah, and I know that you also actually raised a round of funding for your startup as well. So how did you actually raise that first round?
Oh, God, it was a pain in the ass. I mean...
Nobody ever said it was easy.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, so we've raised $1.3 million so far, and it's all pre-seed still. Mostly from angels. We've had, I guess, one fund, and we were warehoused into another fund. But yeah, I mean, the thing with Own Trail, and it's funny because like we're at this moment right now with like everyone kind of leaving Twitter and stuff, where suddenly everyone's looking around and being like, oh, social media is really toxic for me and I need something better. But we've been saying that all along. Like, we've been building Own Trail in this way that's very values driven. Like, we will never sell people to advertisers. We're not creating like popularity contests or doom scrolling or any of the things that are inherent to like why social media can be damaging, you know? And so we're kind of having a moment right now, which is awesome, where people are realizing that that's actually really important right now. But from a fundraising perspective, like, we're not for everyone. Like, the investors that want growth at all costs and that want just like pure, like, you know, revenue extraction instead of value creation, which, you know, there's a lot of those. We're not for those people. And so fundraising is a numbers game anyway, but when you're building a values-driven startup, and we're first-time founders, I'm a woman, my co-founder is non-binary, like, we don't match a lot of patterns, and so it was harder work. But then the cool thing is that because we didn't budge on our values during that whole process, we've ended up with really, really awesome investors in our corner. So it's worth it, you know, but it does take a lot of work. And I'm back out there raising again, so.
I actually did see that. And eventually, so I go on your website, I create my trail from kind of where I started, where I graduated. I've had a trail that's gone from ups and downs, so I'm really excited to build it out. But then what's kind of your next goal? Like, once you have this all written out, is it really just to have that internal mindset of, am I where I want to be? Or is it more to share it amongst others to feel like you're not alone if you're struggling? Or is it both? And then what's the future of the company?
Yeah, well, it's really action oriented and it's very community driven. So it's, like I mentioned, it's really about like making progress on your trail. One of the big ways we do that is people can ask for help on, like, if you share milestones that you're working on right now or things you're working towards, you can ask for help from the community, and it's called a help beacon. And it's kind of like a bat signal to the greater Own Trail community, and then people rally around and help each other. And so, you know, and there's a lot of conversations going on. People connect. They have have messaging and conversations, but it's more action oriented. So it's not just sitting around talking about nothing, but it's really like people working towards their goals together. And so that's really the future of where we're going. Is like, we have a really big vision, which is like, everybody in the world has a trail, and it's the most authentic version of you in digital form, and it's what you use to unlock opportunities, to navigate life, you know, in a way that's true to you. And people, it's this, you know, I kind of think of like LinkedIn is kind of like this very masculine platform that is for all genders. We started off being women-centered, and now we've expanded to all genders, but we are very feminine ideals around authenticity, community, kind of this helping each other, you know? And so it's really about people showing up authentically and helping each other navigate their lives together.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think COVID just highlighted that sometimes we all kind of feel alone in a sense. And I think everybody who has struggled either career-wise or personally at one point or another has felt like they don't know where to go and they don't know what's next. So I think by putting it out there, by asking for help, I could definitely see how that's helpful for everybody. I mean, building that community around that. And from your perspective, what is the hardest part of being an entrepreneur?
I think it is for me, it's the fundraising part. I don't like asking for money. Like, I love building. I'm really good at bringing together amazing teams, and I'm really good at like kind of building stuff strategically and all the, like, this is my jam. I love it. It's just the getting money part that, you know, because building Zillow in the early days, we were very well funded, and we were able to build a really incredible consumer experience for many years before even worrying about monetization. So I think like the not having the privilege to do that and having to figure out like the revenue piece and the fundraising piece really early on while we're building this really huge vision consumer platform has been the challenging part, but have learned a ton, and we're making it work. So.
Yeah, from a venture background, never hear that it's fun. So definitely see, but hopefully it all works out. And if you could go back in time, maybe to 2 years ago, when you first started, had this idea, is there anything you would tell yourself or do differently?
I'll say I don't have any regrets so far, and I think it's because we've been really laser focused on values. I mean, there's a million things I've learned over the course of time, but I'm also the kind of person that has to learn by doing. So even if I told myself all the things in the beginning, I wouldn't have listened probably to myself. But yeah, so I mean, you know, I think early on I was very kind of disorienting, all the different feedback that comes in, and everyone has these very strong opinions and thinks they're an expert on stuff. So just kind of like knowing what I'm getting into there is helpful. But I've had a really strong support system of other founders, investors, advisors, friends around that have made it pretty good. So yeah, I wouldn't change anything entirely.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about that because I've actually had a lot of entrepreneurs come to me who are looking for advisors for the company that they're working for, are looking for mentors. Is there anything that you did to really get that community of individuals who could help you really push forward OwnTrail?
Other founders have been a really large part of it, and actually investors, not even just my investors, but like friends that are investors, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that because I've been really open and authentic, which very on brand, right? But like I've been very authentic about the experience from the beginning, which I think helps other people be more authentic. And when you do that, you suddenly have a lot of people that are like sharing their real experience with you. And you know, I started this community called Authentic that is about 200 founders big right now, and it's all these people that are building values-driven startups, and like we're very open with each other in that group. And yeah, I think like it can't be like contrived. I don't really believe in building networks just transactionally, right? Because it doesn't create the same outcome. But I think when you're just open with people about your experience, and then people open up to you, and then you realize that like none of us are that alone in it. Like, you know, kind of a funny little side project anecdote here that I did recently, I don't know if you saw it, is these founder rejection letter NFTs. And like that was really fun because it's like, okay, we all get rejected all the time. Like, why not celebrate that and make it into a fun thing instead of everyone sitting around feeling like a reject, you know? And so things like that, where it's like, you know, create space for people to be open about their experience and realize you're all going through it together. And then it makes it more fun, but you also end up with a lot of people that are there in your corner to help.
Yeah, and I've also actually told some entrepreneurs where it's so important in this creator economy to talk about your journey, to like show your journey so people are following you along the way, where it's not just like, hey, here's a product, it's successful, go out. But it's like, no, what did you, like, I want to see you like in your room struggling, being like, well, what am I doing? How am I building this? It's like, people like to see that, so you're really building a community around your product. Like as your whole company is doing, it's nobody gets to point A to point B without something along the way. And to show that, I think is really important. But then also what you're saying, where then it kind of opens up the door to ask for help and to ask people to really be able to provide feedback and help out with whatever it is that you're doing.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So the whole build in public thing, right? I think there's something to it.
Yeah. Well, I want to end with, what is one piece of advice that you have for the listeners today?
Yeah, and your listeners are largely pretty entrepreneurial too, right?
Yep. Investors, entrepreneurs, creators, we have them all.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my broken record advice is that there's no one right path. And right, like that's the whole premise of what we're building at OwnTrail and my book and everything. But I think it's important because if there's no one right path, then you can't get it wrong either. And I think a lot of times we're held back from things because we're afraid of getting it wrong. We're afraid of failing. And, you know, when you look at the coolest journeys of people that you really admire, you'll see, you know, when you see what their real journeys are like, there's plenty of like failures or getting, you know, like mistakes along the way, but those are the things that lead to really cool stuff. And so I guess the advice is to, you know, be conscious of risk assessment, you know, be intentional, but then also move forward and don't be scared of getting it wrong, because you really can't.
Yeah, and I would say that even for myself, like I don't think I fail enough. I think most of us will say that we're sometimes scared of failure. I mean, whether it's to be a creator, start a company, quit your job, start something new, follow the money. Like there's so many reasons that people stay in something that doesn't necessarily make them happy or make them the best version of yourselves. But it's like taking that leap, like you never know what the outcome could be.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, failure doesn't always look like trying something and having it not work either. Like oftentimes there's like, just think about how many times you have to get told no before you get a yes, you know, and shoot those shots and expect that you'll get a lot of no's. But when you do get a yes, it's really sweet.
Well, Rebekah, thank you so much for coming on the Girls Table today. For everybody listening, go create your trail. I am going to as well, so I will share it out once it is done. Also, you could have Rebekah's, which I will share the link to. Rebekah, I know your Twitter is at Rebekah _Bastian. Is there anywhere else the listeners could find you?
Yeah, I mean, OwnTrail is the best place to find me. And I'm on, LinkedIn and Instagram and everything too. I'm very findable. And you know what? As soon as we hang up, I'm going to create a promo code that's Girls Table for anyone that wants 25% off of Own Trail membership too. So you can go ahead and share that out, and would love to see more of your listeners on Own Trail. And follow along on all your journeys and connect with me there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you on the Girls Table today, and we will talk soon.
Thank you.